In this video, I'm going to show you how you can program realistic sounding drums in Superior Drummer 3 and Studio One, but the concepts will apply to whatever DAW or virtual drum program you use. I'm David Duarte, aka Paper Trails. I'm an artist, music producer, and engineer, and I'm here to share the insight and knowledge I've acquired over 2 decades working in music. Drum programming is a super useful tool in a producer or artist tool belt. Here are a few reasons why you should learn how to program drums. For demos, to have a starting point and something to build the rest of your demo upon. A lot of artists will use loops for this, which is fine, but it never really works for me. It's much quicker just to play a kick snare beat and program in some basic cymbals to start. The better these are programmed, the easier it will be to get a drummer to play what's in your head and what's actually right for the song. For pre-production, as a producer, often singer-songwriters come to me with their songs, and before we go to actually record them, we want to do what is called pre-production, where we test out different tempos, keys, song structures, and drum patterns. I like to program the basic drum pattern idea so we can build the rest of the production upon it. If we're doing overdub recording as opposed to live band recording, this programmed drum track will now serve as our metronome and will be much more fun to record the rest of the tracks to. We'll also be able to refine the patterns as the song evolves throughout the production process without being committed to previously recorded live drums. For final recordings, if the drums are meant to sound like acoustic or live drums, I always prefer to have a real drummer play these. One, it's a whole lot more fun when you've got real musicians collaborating on your project. Two, with good drummers, it's usually faster and generally they'll play better, more interesting parts than you would have programmed. And three, drums are really fun to record, and each time you record, you have new sounds that have never been heard before, as opposed to samples anyone can buy and use. That said, we don't always have the budget or access to a great drummer or studio. In this case, you'll need to get into the finer details of the timing, velocities, and drum kit choices, which leads me to my next point. The first thing you need to do is stop thinking like a guitarist, singer, keyboardist, whatever, and start thinking like a drummer. So what does that mean? If you've never sat down at a drum kit, you might start programming some crazy patterns that only an octopus could play, and that sounds pretty cool if you're an octopus. Instead, I want you to close your eyes and imagine sitting behind a drum kit. Now visualize what is possible with the limbs you have. You can pull up the user interface on your virtual drums to see how it's all laid out and familiarize yourself with it. If you play in a band or go to shows regularly, watch the drummers and take mental notes on how they play. Pay close attention to their hands and feet. Also pay attention to the drums in songs you like and take note on the style of play as well as the tonal qualities of the drums. In my previous video called Vocal Effects, Shape Your Sound and Find Your Artistic Voice, I go into detail about this with vocal effects, and the same principles apply here. That will give you a basic understanding of how drums are played and how they should sound. With that mindset in place, let's get into the programming. First, you want to find a kit you like. Go through the preset kits to hear what they sound like with processing to get an idea of what might work for your song. You'll want to try out different cymbals and different shells once you've got your arrangement more solidified, but you just want to get a good starting point right now. Another thing you'll want to do is decide whether you want to record the MIDI in Superior Drummer or in your DAW's MIDI editor. Personally, I prefer programming the MIDI in Studio One's MIDI editor than bringing it into Superior Drummer for some more finessing and exporting at the end. The workflow in Studio One is just much better for me overall. How I get started will depend if any instrumentation is recorded yet or not. If nothing is recorded yet, I'll play a basic kick snare beat on a drum pad for a measure or two. Then quantize it. Then I'll add in a hi-hat or a ride cymbal. And quantize that. Then I would just duplicate that section as much as needed and modify the pattern throughout the song. At this stage, we're just using this as a nice sounding metronome, and we'll fine tune it as we go. A lot of artists don't like hearing a metronome while they're playing, so this will help them get a better performance and give you a better idea of how your track should sound. For this song, I already recorded the acoustic guitar because I knew exactly how I wanted it to be played and how it should sound. And I don't mind playing to a simple click track. So I'll record the kick and snare pattern along to the acoustic guitar track. And then let's add in a hi-hat or a ride. I'll quickly program both. I would copy and paste and then drag the second version down to the ride and just mute it for now. I'm gonna try it out later. From there, we want to adjust the velocities and timing. You can align your MIDI to be in time with the recorded audio track visually or do it by ear. I recommend doing both. You'll notice nothing is on grid for this song. That's because when I played the acoustic guitar, I used the grid and metronome as a guide, but I'm playing in and out of it with feel depending on the part of the song. When I'm working with good players, I'm not gonna edit their performance as much as I'm gonna edit the programming to match their performance. A lot of people do that the other way around, and that just ain't my bag. The grid is one of those things that was made up by people to use as a guide and help in the editing process in digital workstations. There is no rule anywhere that says you absolutely have to play and edit to the grid. In fact, if you do edit things exactly to the grid, your music can sound quite stale and robotic. This is not the case for all music though. With faster, more intense styles or within EDM genres, the music actually calls for it to be quantized. So you really gotta use your judgment to decide what's right for the song you're working on. Let's align these drums with the acoustic guitar. For the acoustic guitar track, you'll see the transients right here. I'm gonna align the drums with those and listen to see if I would like it slightly in front or slightly behind the beat. Now we'll hear that. And I'm gonna change the velocities on some of these as well, on these hi-hats. Now you can see and hear that for these two measures, the drums are now in time with the guitar and not quantized to the grid like we did in the other example. This could be fairly time consuming, so I'm just gonna go to the already programmed MIDI. You'll see I've labeled all the drums and cymbals in the left-hand column of the MIDI editor. When I click on the name, the velocities of each hit show up in this bottom window. Any other information that is contained within that MIDI will also be there. Along with adjusting the timing, varying the velocities will give the drums a more human feel and a whole lot more musicality, which is what we're going for here. There are a couple ways to go about varying the velocities. I think the most common way people do it would be to highlight all the MIDI, right-click, go to Humanize, where you can adjust how much you want to vary the velocities as well as the note timing in both directions. You can definitely overdo it and humanize it to the point where it sounds like a really bad drummer, which is not the kind of human we're trying to emulate here. I'll use that feature more when I'm quickly putting something down for a demo or pre-production. And I'm probably not gonna mess with the timing too much in that case. The other way to go about varying the timing would be manually, and for me, this sounds a whole lot better. I can put the accents and ghost notes exactly where I want them. As I'm listening to the drums along with the performance, I'm getting a feel for how the drums fit in with it. So I just manually start bringing the velocities up or down as I go. I'm not worried about hitting any specific numbers velocity-wise. I'm just eyeballing it and going by how it sounds. I'll likely tweak these a bit more as the production progresses. Here you'll see I've got other cymbal hits like other crashes and different ride articulations. These are really key to making it sound as realistic as possible. Real drummers are not gonna hit the cymbal in the same exact spot every time, just like they're not gonna hit it with the same velocity every time. They're gonna use the whole cymbal to get different sounds by hitting it in different spots with different parts of their sticks. For example, if they want a really pingy sound, they'll use the tip of their stick to hit the bell of the ride, which is this center part here. And if they want more of that bell tone, they'll use the shank of their stick, which is the middle part of the stick, to hit the bell. In the Superior Drummer MIDI editor, you can audition all these different articulations pretty quickly, as it's laid out really nicely here. This all goes back to my earlier point about thinking like a drummer and watching how they play. And if you are a drummer, please drop a comment if I misspeak about any of this stuff. I've literally taught myself all of this, so I may get the terminology mixed up from time to time. Now, the acoustic guitar is not playing a straight 1, 2, 3, 4 rhythm. It's playing a 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 pattern, which are 8th note triplets mixed in with some 16th note triplets. So I want the drums to play along with that pattern, and I'm using the different articulations on the ride cymbal to sort of dance with the guitar. You'll hear how the ride bell shank is accenting all the highest notes on the guitar. Sometimes they're an 8th note in front of the guitar, which to me feels like they're dancing partners who let go of each other's hands for a moment and then come back together on the next beat. So we have that ride pattern on the right side of the kit, but I want to fill up the stereo field with a real washy sound for this chorus, so I kept a hi-hat in there as well, which is on the left side of the kit. But instead of using a stick, we're going to use the foot pedal, and remember I want it to sound washy. So I'm using the pedal hi-hat open, which would be the drummer bringing their foot up after hitting the foot pedal to bring the hi-hats together. Then I would have simply duplicated that pattern and adjusted the timing and velocities slightly, as well as adding or subtracting notes in the other measures. This is actually a good use case for humanizing the velocities ever so slightly. As for the rest of the cymbals, this kit has 3 crashes and a splash. These cymbals being all different types and sizes and at different locations around the kit gives it a good variety of sounds and fills out the stereo field nicely. Again, as your production evolves, you might change these out and try other options, but do it quickly and don't overthink it. When we have a lot of options, it can really hinder our creativity and productivity. I generally want to use the crash cymbals sparingly and on the first beat of a measure or even a first chord of a progression. They're usually signifying a change of some sort. Drummers will also use them in higher energy sections. Let's hear those with the rest of the music so you can hear what I'm talking about. With the kick and the snare, you want them totally locked in with the bass. So again, I'm adjusting the timing manually on these to match the bass guitar, and I'm varying the pattern some to keep the beat interesting. Let's hear the bass and kick together, and then we'll bring in the snare and cymbals. You can really start to hear it come together now. And adding in some ghost notes on the snare by duplicating a snare note and reducing the velocity until it sounds about right gives it more movement. Kind of dancing with the cymbals on the bass. The drums, bass, and acoustic guitar are the rhythm section for this song, so you want to think of them as dancing together. If one of them is out of step or out of rhythm with the others, the whole song can quickly fall apart. If you've ever been dancing with another human being, you'll understand that once you and your partner are in sync with one another, it's like you're effortlessly floating down a river on a raft. You become one with the flow of the river. But if one of you gets out of rhythm, it's like you've suddenly hit some rapids and you've fallen out of your raft, and now the river is bashing your head against the rocks. And that's painful. Let's hear the whole kit with the bass and acoustic guitar and notice how they're dancing together, moving in sync but not making the same moves at the same time, making complementary moves so they're not fighting each other. At this point, I'm really liking where we're at, so I'm going to go ahead and export the drum MIDI so we can bring it into Superior Drummer. I'll right-click on the MIDI track and go to Export Selection, Here you'll name your MIDI file and save it as a MIDI file, and you'll want to save it somewhere you can easily find it. Then we want to go into Superior Drummer, go to Track, import MIDI file, and import that into Superior Drummer. Make sure your cursor is at the beginning of the session so it's automatically aligned. Also make sure Follow Host is selected so you're in sync with your session. I already brought this in here, so I'm going to unmute this and double left click on the MIDI and bring up the grid editor. Here I can check out all the different articulations and maybe refine some of it if needed. The main reason I don't record the MIDI directly into Superior Drummer is I can't simply duplicate notes or sections. I have to copy and paste it or play it, and that really slows me down. Now let's go to the mixer. There's some cool plugins I like within Superior Drummer, so sometimes I'll keep that processing for the final mix, and other times I don't use it at all. Within the mixer window, you can choose how much bleed you want on each track and from which instruments. Real drums have bleed in all the mics, and if they're recorded really well, the bleed is actually very useful in the mixing stage. But it's nice to be able to control that and maybe leave it out of certain mics like the kick or the toms, for example. Real quick, if you're learning from this, make sure to like, subscribe, and if you need more personalized help, there's a link in the description for one-on-one coaching sessions with me, where we can cover everything from music production and engineering to guitar, bass, ukulele, or keyboard. Or if you're interested in having me produce, mix, or master your project, my contact info is in the description as well. Then you want to bounce your tracks to audio. So you're going to go to Track, Export Song as Audio File, and you can choose in the Advanced tab right here, you can choose to bounce output channels. That's bouncing each output channel post-mixer. So that means with the processing on and with all your fader levels. Or you can bounce the microphone channels, which will give you each microphone channel pre-mixer without the processing. A really cool feature there is split close mic audio from bleed. This gives you both clean close mic drums with no bleed and the bleed on separate tracks all to themselves. And you could process those a little differently. Also very useful. For this song, I bounced through the output channels with all the additional surround mics engaged, but without any processing. If you're in Studio One like I am, make sure to save these to the media folder within your session folder. Otherwise, Studio One won't automatically link the tracks if you move the session to another drive. Another way you can do it in Studio One, and I'm not sure if other DAWs have this feature or not, is transform to audio track. First, let's mute the MIDI in Superior Drummer and unmute the MIDI in Studio One. In Superior Drummer, I've assigned outputs to each channel, and that's what's going out to Studio One. And when we bring up Studio One's mixer, you'll see Superior Drummer's outputs to the left, and I've checked all the ones I'm using and named them accordingly in the mixer. I left all the unprocessed channels black just so I know they're unprocessed, and I use this purple color for the processed channels. You can organize this however you like. Then I'm going to go back to the edit window and right click on the Superior Drummer channel, go down to Transform to Audio Track, and I'll check Render All Channels. Render inserts if I have plugins on there that I want to commit to. If I have plugins on there that I don't want to commit to, I'll uncheck that. I have neither right now, so it doesn't matter. And I'll check Preserve Instrument Track State so I can go backwards if I need it. Here we are after the tracks have rendered to audio files. This shows that there's still MIDI there, but that MIDI is now embedded in these audio files. Since we kept the instrument track state, we can always transform back to an instrument track. From here we would do more mixing, and for this song I'm going to bring in some other samples to blend these realistic sounding drums with some electronic sounding drums. But that will be a subject for another video. If you got any questions, leave a comment below. I'd love to know how you approach drum programming and what your challenges are. And if you're ready to dive into some vocal production, I've got videos linked for that right here.